just want you to introduce yourself for everybody that doesn't know you.
Okay. My name is Pemon Rami. I am a storyteller, first of all. But I dabble in film, television, multimedia, technology, design, radio, TV. I've done 17 feature films, over 300 industrial films, probably 20 or 30 documentaries. We've also run institutions in Chicago, Phoenix, and also in Los Angeles.
Wow, okay. So I know, just looking back, looking at some of the history, doing a little research, now you go back to the 60s,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Now what I believe I read that there was more activism first involved. You were involved in activism?
Well, I was actually a musician first. I was a wrestler.
Oh, wow.
And the reason I became a wrestler, I went to Wendell Phillips High School, which for most people that don't know was one of the first black high schools after Reconstruction in the North. But anyway, I went to Wendell Phillips, and I discovered that if we were going to swim, we had to swim naked.
Oh, wow.
That's what they did with boys during that period of time.
Wow.
And so I said, first of all, I didn't want to learn how to swim. Secondly, the notion of swimming naked was just out the question for me during that period.
Right.
And so I saw that you could join a sports team, and then you had to go swimming. So I joined the wrestling team. And I ended up excelling, but I also ended up meeting a guy named Michael Jones, who was a percussionist.
Oh, wow.
And so we started a percussion group. We started playing at the football games. We started traveling around the city and playing different high schools. And then I saw a show by Oscar Brown Jr. It's called Lyrics of Sunshine and Shadows. It was the first play to be produced in Chicago Public Schools, in touring. And I saw the show and I said, that's what I want to do.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know that it was theater. I didn't know that it was a musical. I just knew that what they were doing on stage is what I wanted to do. And so at the time, I was either 15, 16. And I started producing.
Oh, wow.
We started putting shows together. We started traveling. And so that's kind of how I got started. And because I had a theater company when I was young, and I was touring, I knew all these people at all these high schools. So in 1968, they held the National Black Power Conference in Philadelphia. And I attended, and my wife and I, she wasn't my wife then, but my wife and I co-chaired the student workshop. And out of that came a manifesto that we would come back and we would change the Department of Education. And we did. We came back and we organized the schools, and 35,000 young people walked out. We were able to get black teachers and principals and administrators, all of which came out of that struggle.
Wow.
And out of that grew the film. So while I was in high school, I did Burning the Iron Feather, which was the first black soap opera. We did it in 1970 at PBS.
Oh, wow.
We shot 13 episodes. And we were supposed to do more, but the money was used for different things at PBS. But it was the highest rated show on PBS during that period.
Wow.
Out of that, I got a call from Sam Greenlee, who was then doing The Spook Who Sat by the Door, and said, I got a part for you. And would I do it? And so I did the part. We shot in California, Gary, and here. I come back from California, and I got a call to be an extra in a movie from an agent. Her name was Shirley Hamilton. And I said, extra? I just came back from a featured role in a movie. What you want me? She said, yeah, it's a movie. It's with Isaac Hayes. I can't get no people. Would you go do it? So I said, fine. So I go to do it, and Isaac Hayes at one point that evening comes over to me and says, do I know you? So we started talking, and he had seen an early release of Spook Who Sat by the Door.
Oh, wow.
And we talked for a long period of time. When they left, a month later, 2 months later, I got a call from American National Pictures asking me would I do Cooley High.
Oh, wow.
And then right after that, I got a call from Motown asking me would I do Mahogany. All at the referral of Isaac Hayes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
so
huge.
that's sort of how I matriculated into the arena. And at the same time, opening a theater, I was the director of Tay Ward's, the assistant director of Tay Ward's Theater on 35th Street, and then I became one of the directors at Kumba with Val Gray, and then we opened the Lomanzino Theater on the west side, and I was there for almost 7, 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, before I moved to California.
Now, I've heard Robert Townsend mention your name as being one of his early teachers.
So let me say this. My journey starts, I'm in show business now as a writer, director, producer because of these two people right here. When I was 15 years old, that's when I found my way to X-Bag on the South Side. And yes, ma'am. And I had this horrible audition. So here, look, I got to tell you the story. So if you didn't know X-Bag, it was in the basement of this rec center, the Hall House, and it's like a 60-seat theater. And I'm going into my first audition, and I'm nervous as all get out. They call my name, Robert Townsend, and I get down there to the stage, and I'm reading the thing, and I go like, because she loves you and she cares about you, and then I hear this voice, thank you. And I was like, no, he goes, thank you. And so back then, I knew God had given me a gift. And so I started to perform and do these characters. I did like 25, the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz. I'd never gotten my braid if it wasn't for you. Alfred Hitchcock, good evening. They found the body in the alleyway. French movies. All of a sudden I hear the voice go, you got the part. That started my journey.
Yes. I had an audition for a play that I was actually asked to direct a place called X-Bag, which was on 67. And we had the auditions, and the auditions were over, and I was leaving the building, and I heard someone doing voices, like Walter Brennan, all of these old actors from TV, and it was him. And I said, so what are you doing? He said, well, I do things, I do voices. I said, well, let me hear them. And so he did some of his voice. I said, well, why didn't you do any of that in the audition? Why, because your audition was terrible. And so I ended up hiring for that play. Then he did another play with us. Then I cast him in his first commercial, which was a Pepsi commercial. I cast him in his first film, which was Cooley High. Then I cast him in Mahogany. Then I went away to college with him and helped him to direct his first play. And we have worked together off and on for years. And yeah, he does consider me his mentor.
So which school, which college did you go to?
The question that I think that you're asking me is, where did I study film? And
Because you went away to college with him first and foremost, so.
Well, he went to Trenton, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
To the college there, and that's where I went up to help him in school.
Okay.
To direct his piece. I had a mentor named Theodore Ward, who was one of the founders of the Negro Federal Theater with Langston Hughes and Richard Wright. He started teaching theater here in the 1930s. And he took me under his wing when he was in his 60s. And one of the things he said to me is that if you're going to move forward, go to school to learn the technical aspects of the business and to learn business. But to learn the business, the creative business with people that are excellent at what they do. Because you can't learn what you need to do in the real situation without being in it. And that's what I did. I ended up, working with the Henry Street Settlement House in New York, the Afro-American Theater of Speech in Harlem, and the National Black Theater, and all the folks here, the Royal Shakespearean Theater in London. I went there to study why people thought Shakespeare was important. And so I did all of this study. And then I was able to come back and apply it to not only the theaters that we had, but the people that we were bringing up. Yesterday on the news, Walter King, the Spellbinder, was on. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, I did see him on WGN, yep.
So Walter, when we had the theater on the West Side, one of the things we wanted to do was to get community people involved. So we went door to door.
Oh, wow.
And we knocked on the doors, and we went to the schools, and we recruited. He was one of the people that we discovered at Farragut, but he was an artist at the time. He was doing little animations. And then he got into the theater, and we did a show, and we had a show where we wanted these canes to appear. So we went to a magic shop, and I took him with me, and he stayed. And he's a great magician now, you know, sort of as a result. So we were coming up in a period where people, we had to build the ecosystem around us. There were no directors in Chicago. There were very few actors that had done anything. So you've got to train the actors, you've got to build the institutions, you've got to train set designers, you got to do all of that if you're going to sustain an institution. Now they have schools that you can go to. They didn't back then.
Right. And so you pretty much, you've seen the industry in Chicago go from what it was in the late 60s to now. Just kind of give us an illustration of what the early days, how, you know, some of the struggles that you may have faced during the 60s and 70s.
Let's go back a little further. And I'm not going to give the date. I'm going to let your viewers do a little research. So I'm going to ask them, when did slavery end? Okay, so taking that into consideration, the first black film company in Chicago opened in 1910.
Foster Photoplay, right?
Foster.
Yep.
That was less than 50 years after slavery ended. So how do people go from being enslaved to being able to produce 40 films within a 50-year period? You talk about struggle. There were there were very few places where they could go to show the films.
Yep.
There were no trained people. He had to train everybody. He had to carry his own projector. He had to make his own movies. He had to sell all of his own tickets. He had to market.
Right.
That was in an early period. So then you go to the 30s. In the 1930s, Langston Hughes, Ted Ward, Margaret Burroughs, Vernon Jarrett, Oscar Brown Jr., a lot of them between the 30s and the 40s had institutions here that were producing. However, what were the things that threw us off track? And I'm going to get back to the 60s in a minute. So in the 1940s, we were developing all this work. So what happened? Color, sound. So when color films began to be made and sound began to be attached, that meant that you had to buy all new cameras. Well, you know what that struggle is now.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so can you imagine what it was then, when you're going from a keyboard player doing the score and a silent film to having to match and deal with that. So that basically disrupted and shut a lot of those groups down. Then when you go to the 50s, right before we get to the 60s, then you got the end of World War II. Well, during World War II, all of the films that were happening during that period had gone away as well, because you couldn't get the financing, and even to make the film was difficult in terms of Kodak. So you have these. Okay, so then you have the death of Malcolm, you have the death of King, and you have the establishment of what is considered the Black Arts Movement. And what does that mean? That means that we go from doing white movies or white plays and replicating them, meaning that you would take Tennessee Williams' play and black actors would do it, to beginning to write things about ourselves. However, there were no theaters.
Oh, wow.
The theaters that were left in the black community were the ones where the white community fled, and then we would have, like on Jeffrey, the Jeffrey Theater. Oh, wow. Because in South Shore there were no black people, you know. So we in some ways inherited those buildings, but they began to fall apart, and so we had to try to keep them up. So in the 60s, we began to look at how do we take art and use it for the upliftment of our people. When people dig up things in Egypt, you know, you go in the ground or you go into Africa and you find pottery, and people talk about, wow, this is art.
Right.
Well, technically, it was a tool to eat. People just valued art. So you make the tool that you eat with beautiful. It wasn't designed to sit on a shelf someplace or sit in a museum. It was designed to build appreciation for yourself and for what you represent. And so we began to look at doing that in the 60s. And so we had to find places to do plays. We had to train the actors. We had to learn what direction was. We had to build the infrastructure for it to build. There were 18 black theater companies in Chicago during that period of time.
Wow.
The Community Film Workshop was one of the first in the country. They opened in the 1970s, and they're still going today. And it was the first training program for film for black folks in the city. But what happened? Diversity happened. And what do I mean by that? The white theaters, or the larger theaters, if someone wants to articulate it that way, begin to say, we need to expand our audience so we can get this diversity money. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do one black play a year. But what happened with that is that the black theaters couldn't get the money because now these other theaters are being given the opportunity to exist.
Right.
And so most of them went out of business and fell away. And that was a legitimate part of it. But on the other hand, you had the development of film during that period of time. Sweetback, Badass Song.
Yep.
That was the first anti-hero movie where a black man stood up and said, I'm not having it,
Right.
no more. Shaft. Shaft gave us the opportunity to be cool, to wear our natural hair, and to get into leather coats, which we, hadn't been doing. But then on the other hand, Superfly, it's around the same time,
Yeah.
caused us to want cocaine and straighten the hair.
Yeah.
So, you sort of have the combination of those. And then you have people like Robert Townsend, who begins to look at what kind of things can we do, because I'm tired of auditioning and going these places and being insulted. And by the way, I just finished a feature film, and they have a Robert Townsend rule that they don't define as a Robert Townsend rule, but you can no longer use your credit cards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Robert put everything on his
Right.
credit cards, right?
Yeah,
so
did I.
Yeah, did you?
Yeah, my first one got
Yeah,
learned.
well, see, the unions, you can't go into the unions now and say, okay, I want to put credit cards up for everything. So they kind of shut that down. And I would assume it's because some people over the years abused it in some way. So I guess my message to you and to your listeners is that our lives and our creativity is tied. It's tied in ways that we don't even understand. For example, people will say to you that, we gave up the blues, right?
Yeah.
And then white people are now saying, well, we did the blues when we were blue.
That's true.
We did jazz when we were beginning to get free. We created rap because they took all the instruments away from us, and we had to have another way to express and tell our stories.
Yep.
So art to us has always been intricately tied to who we are as a people.
Yep.
And whatever we create next will be after we are moved by what in society is pushing us in some direction or the other. The role of the filmmaker has to be to give a reflective look of where we've been and what history has been. Give a similar look at where we are today and how we're living our lives, and then to project a future that is promising and uplifting. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to win every battle in the film. It doesn't mean that we can't do horror movies or comedies or anything like that. But at the end of the day, what do you want people to do when they walk out of your movie? And what are you trying to express within that process?
Yep.
And so I contend that the only ethnic groups that really have undertold stories are us.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know, we have so many stories that have never been touched. We could go on for the next 100 years
And
doing a
we are
movie
not
every week.
We are not a monolith, and I totally agree with that. Which also leads me to my next question. I was about to ask you, is, even going back to the '70s, and I know we can start there. During the blaxploitation era, as people call it, and I love that you call it the anti-hero films. I love that. And soul cinema has been called so many things. In Chicago, primarily, we start seeing films that are not those. We start seeing films like Mahogany and Coolie High and Monkey Hustle that create a different narrative. What was your take on that during that time versus like a Shaft or like, you know, Dolomite or some of those films?
Having been one of the people that worked on 14 features during that period of time, most of them in Chicago, I felt that there was a distinct difference between the stories that we wanted to tell, and we told them cheaply because there were no resources. And so you know, we had, you know, when you look at our films, you could tell during that period that we'd have a lot of money put in them. But blaxploitation, if you want to really define it as a period, is when the major studios decided that there was a whole lot of money to be made because these black films are being made and they're making money. But we have to exclude. So you mentioned Monkey Hustle, for example. I would put Monkey Hustle in the exploitation category.
Okay.
I wouldn't put Mahogany or Spook Who Sat by the Door
Right.
or Learning Tree
Or Cooley High.
or Cooley High in that same category. The reason I put Monkey Hustle there is because it was excessively exploitive. They underpaid everybody. They came into the community and they said, we're going to do this big picnic at the end of the movie, and they had lettuce and told the people in the neighborhoods, you know, to sort of act like you got some food.
Wow.
Yeah. and so part of it is that. And so I think that as we look at terms, we have to stop accepting other cultural groups' explanations of what and who we are. And so for us to use the term blaxploitation, we have to be really clear in our own heads about what that means. The project had to be designed to exploit us. Well, how can you say that Spook Who Sat by the Door was designed to exploit us? It was produced by black people, it was written by black people, it was directed by a black person. It was written in a way about our upliftment and revolution. How do you put that in that category? Because you're dealing with years and not with subjects and impact.
I think, and I definitely agree with that. And as we were saying too, you've seen kind of the growth from the 70s, the 80s, you know, and also the filmmakers coming from Chicago and us being really at the forefront of some of that culture. I want to know, like, what, in terms of like going into the period of the 80s into the 90s, like what was the difference and what growth did you start to see?
I think the whole difference is in how the United States embraced film. And what I mean by that, Kodak started to develop new films. Canon started to develop lenses. The universities began to teach it. People began to write about it. There began to be training programs in the community. None of that stuff existed before. And so what you see is the development of these folks that are coming out of this movement and they're learning. And so when I was in Africa shooting in 2014, I felt that African cinema is where black people were in the 80s. But it has to do with technology. It has to do with our exposure. It has to do with, now we have people that have done major projects. Like, for you to call yourself a filmmaker, how many movies do you have to have made?
Just one.
And to be a good one, how many do you have to make?
Right.
And I contend to be a really good filmmaker, you gotta make movies, you gotta make a lot of them so you learn the ups and downs of what it requires to do it. And so part of it, I think, has been your generation had access to good movies to see, because that's the other part of it. When you look at some of these older movies, you know, I mean, some of the black and white was like really, really cool. But you look at, you all had movies to watch. You had people to imitate.
Right.
You know, you had these folks that were stepping out and showing that it could be done. And as a result of that, it has encouraged people to be able to step out. Now you got technology, so everybody that's got a cell phone thinks they're a filmmaker. They're not. Well, they might be a filmmaker, but they're not necessarily a storyteller. That's a whole other thing.
Right.
But to utilize the technology that's available to us still requires for people to know the art of storytelling.
Yep.
And I think that that's what's lacking. The other thing that's lacking is that when you look at a lot of movies, when you get to the end, it's like, why did you write this movie as if it was going to be a sequel? I mean, I know you might want to have one, but the possibility of that is rare. And so in this movie, and then, you know, end it completely, and then have another scene where the person walks around and falls off the cliff. You know, and then you got something else to take you someplace else, but finish the film. And then the other challenge is that a lot of people are writing for Netflix or Amazon Prime. And if you're looking at movies now and you're saying, I want to make a movie like that, by the time your film is done, people are not necessarily making movies like that anymore. The other tragic thing, and this is on two levels, there are too many filmmakers that don't watch movies. There are too many actors that don't watch movies and don't see plays. How do you do that and understand your industry without participating in it? And then on top of that, why should I come to see your stuff and you won't come see mine?
That's true. That is true.
These people want you to buy tickets, but they don't want to come and support you when you're trying to do something. But I am hopeful. And I'm hopeful because I'm meeting so many people like yourselves that are interested in telling our stories and preserving them. Because that's more important than anything.
Yeah.
And my father passed maybe about 15 years ago, something like that. Those dates I can't keep up with. But I videotaped him before he died. Spent a couple hours with him. Now, I haven't been able to watch it. That's a whole nother thing. But I have it for his great-great-great-great-grandchildren to see what he felt, what he'd sound like, all of that. And sometimes that's more important than actually telling a fiction movie, you know, a nonfiction movie.
I agree, because I did the same. I did that with my parents. About 6 or 7 years ago, I actually sat down, did an interview with them, and asked them a lot of questions. One's from Chicago, one's from Mississippi. So I was like, what was it like growing up in Jim Crow, Mississippi, and, you know, in Chicago during the same time period? And preserving that history is very important. And I think what we see in film is, can be a history lesson. I want to know, like, because you've worked on so many things, man. Like I say, the classic films that we all know, like Cooley High. Like Cooley High is in the, you know, the Library of Congress registry, and that's culturally significant, you know. And
I have 3 movies that are there.
Really? So with 3?
Spook Who Sat by the Door, Cooley High, and Mahogany.
Okay. Oh, wow.
They're all there. Now, did we expect that we were making them? No. No, you're just trying to tell a story. Sam Greenlee, who was the writer, is the only person I've ever met that bootlegged his own movie.
Really?
Yeah. So Sam would go home and he would make the copies. He had a duplicating machine, and he would make the copies. And then he would go outside, or he would go to these restaurants up on 63rd, and he would say, I got Spook Who Sat by the Door. The movie's free, but my signature is $20.
Wow.
And that's how he marked. And he sold them for years. That's how he was paying rent. You know, now some of the copies you would get home and they would be blank, you know, because he wasn't necessarily technologically savvy, but his heart was in the right place.
Wow.
But yeah, but that was part of, you know, the essence of it. And we have to look at this as if it's a business and not just assume that acting and directing is the only thing that you can do and be successful in this business. The reality is that any job that you have, any job, in any environment, is also hired on film.
Yep.
You know, so for example, if you're a nurse, if you're a you know, they always need medics on sets. You know, you need drivers. You need someone that's accountants. You know, and a lot of people don't consider that. But you've got all these other opportunities. You don't just have to be in front of the camera.
Right.
Ava DuVernay, who a lot of your listeners will know who she is. I heard an interview with Ava, and she said she was a PR person, and she was doing PR for all these films. And she said, these people are stupid. If they giving them money to do movies, I can do a movie. And a lot of times, you know, you find that to be, it's opportunity and not necessarily talent sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, but then on the other hand, where do you find yourself? Two quick Robert Townsend stories. When I cast Robert in the first two movies, and you go out on set, most of the time when you hire actors or extras, they stand by craft services. They're over by the food, then they're attacking it. Robert, when they did the breaks, he would be standing by the director, or he would stand and watch the director of photography. He was studying the process while he was on set. He wasn't there to eat, he was in there to learn the process. And then I called him one weekend and asked him what he was doing. He said he was watching every Academy Award movie that had won Best Picture because he wanted to know what they had in common.
Right.
And that's the kind of study that I'm talking about, that filmmakers, you know, you have to study the process, whether you like it, whether you don't. You know, you look at it and say, okay, well, this is the thing that I don't want to do, but these are the things that I think are very helpful.
It's so funny you say that because I was literally just watching the Club Shay Shay interview with Damon Wayans, and Damon Wayans says that Robert tells Keenan this back when he was getting ready to make I'm going to get you sucker. He says, you know, he wanted Robert Townsend to make do sketches with him, direct sketches, and he said Robert Townsend told him, he said, no, you're not disciplined enough. He said, no. He said, you like to chase women. He said, you're not disciplined enough. So it's so funny you say that, just in addition to that.
To follow up on that story, I did a show here that was, this is years ago, that was, we had a producer that came in from New York, and they wanted to look at taking it to Broadway. It's called The Black Fairy. It was about a little black fairy that didn't have any magic. And she goes on a trip throughout history and what happens with her. So one of the singers that was in the show was excellent. He was as good as Stevie Wonder during that period of time. I mean, he was really, really good. So we bring these producers in. This couple comes in, and they watch the show, and they say, well, we'd like to invest in him. You know, we want to put an album out with this guy. He goes over to the man's wife and hits on her in front of her husband. So that put an end to that deal. And what I'm in essence saying is that we have 24 hours in a day. What you are is what you spend the majority of your time doing. If you spend the majority of your time chasing women or men, then that's what you are.
Yep.
If you spend the majority of your time studying or creating, then that's what you are. Yeah.
So I want to talk about Chicago as a backdrop for so many films. You know, and like I say, you've been a part of this culture for 50 plus years, man, which I mean, that is, you know, phenomenal. And what do you think it is about Chicago that just attracts people here?
It looks different. Chicago, aside from the skyline, you can almost find a community that looks like any place else in the country. If you want to find some place that looks like Louisiana, there are neighborhoods that look like that. There are neighborhoods, like we shot something here that we wanted to, it was supposed to be in France. Well, these columns outside of the DuSable Museum that borders their steps are the same kind of columns that they use in France. So you know, you come here for that reason. And the diversity of the city is extremely, I think, important. The unions are an issue, but that's a whole nother story. But I think that what makes Chicago most beneficial is our location. We're a travel hub, so it's easy to get in and out of here. You have a lot of space. You have a lot of different locations that you can use. You have a film office for the state and a film office for the city that helps you to get through the processes. And so I think that it's all of that. New York is a horrible place to shoot. Traffic makes it terrible. LA has gotten to be the same way. And so when you're planning to do a film, the amount of time that it takes to get from one point to the other is extremely important. You know, so if your day is 10 hours, and it takes you 2 hours to get over to the west side and then back to the south. That's a consideration. So from that perspective, I think Chicago represents a unique opportunity to come here and play. Like we shot something recently, and it's Tennessee, and it's part of it's shot was supposed to be in Tennessee. Part of it's here. But we went out to the forest preserves, and the houses that were out by the forest preserves looked just like the ones in Tennessee. So we were able to match the neighborhoods close enough for it to look like we were actually there.
Where do you see the future of film going in Chicago? Because ever since I would say Center Space, it kind of blew up. But we know that there were productions happening here before that, but it seems like there became more of an explosion since.
Well, there's always going to be projects that are generated by space. And so Center Stage and Center Space are two of the biggest options to be able to do that here. However, your question was, what's going to happen to film? And that's a different answer for me. The answer for film is it's going to be determined by you and your group and the younger people behind you that are going to say, this is how we can utilize this tool to impact ABCD. If you all choose that you're going to be revolutionary, and what I mean by revolutionary is pushing the boundaries of creativity. I'm not even talking about tearing up nothing. I'm just saying, I am going to take my cell phone and I'm going to hang upside down and I'm going to shoot everything so that the world is upside down and I'm the only one that's right side up. The ability to be able to take the images that are on the walls here and to be able to reflect the good of us or the bad of us in creative ways. Because that's what ultimately film is supposed to do. What I hope will happen is that there will be an opportunity for there to be a space in which people can challenge themselves. You mentioned Robert and Keenan. You have to find someone in your space that gives you the yin and the yang, that forces you to get up in the morning, where you want to sleep in, and they're the ones that, we got to do this thing, we got to write this thing. You haven't written nothing in 2 weeks, whatever the case might be. And the more you're in an environment where you have other creative people, then you can say, okay, well, this person makes an excellent producer for me so that I can focus on this. Or here's the music person. He might not know how to score a film, but he writes some excellent music. So let's sit down and figure out how you're doing in a movie. Let's watch a movie with no sound and then go back and watch it with sound with this person so that he gets just the sense of it. The other thing that I say to people often, I just said it to someone on our crew the other day, we have to create our own opportunities. So if I shoot a movie today and I say, I want to hire you as my director or my DP, the studio will say to me, what experience does he have on feature film? And then I might say, well, he doesn't have any. He said, well, no, you can't hire him. Right? However, if I turn around and I say, I'm going to hire you anyway. I'm going to hire you as my first AD. I'm going to pay you out of my money. And at the end of this, it'll be on your credit. So the next time I go to them, they won't be able to say you don't have any experience. Right. The young man who's directing the film that we just finished, I took him to Nigeria when I shot the film there. He was there for 6 months. It was my first AD. It was the first time that he had worked on a major project like that. Of course, starring Danny Glover. But he was able to come back and parlay that into getting his own film done and the money for it, and we just wrapped on it. Oh, wow. So that I think the future is bright because I understand the same way that I felt when I was young, that you all have all the capacity in the world. And if you can look at the need to create for your children. When I was looking at the walls here, I remember something that Haki Mahbudi from Third World Press said. He said, what's on the walls of your children dictates what and who they are. So what do you put up there?
Wow.
When he said that, I saw this young lady dancing on TikTok, and on the back of her wall, she had all these Nike boxes. There was no art. There was just, Nike boxes, which meant that consumerism is what's the majority of things that I had. But what positive images, what positive books are we feeding our children? So when they wake up in the morning, they're not just looking at basketball players, but they're looking at all these other things that are motivational. So that's my answer.
Wow. Yeah, man. I mean, and Chicago is such an architectural town that it's all around us. I've taken my son with me, man, to so many places. He's in college now, but
Yeah, that was one of my disappointments when I came back. My grandson was here, and I wanted him to see the places where I grew up and the places we went, and the majority of them have been torn down, especially on the south side. They're vacant lots where everything used to be. And that's, I think, that I think is tragic. So what is the future? The future is the ability to us to find the next group that's going to lead us in terms of this creative future and environment. Like when we look at Afrofuturism, what does that really mean? And can you define a future for black people by themselves? Without any other ethnic group influence? Can you see it? And if we can't see a future like that, then we're not projecting a future of freedom and independence and all those things that are associated with it. We should be able to, I mean, I was disappointed in Black Panther. Now, let me tell you what my disappointment was, because I don't want people to get it confused. I love the fact that it focused on Africa. I love the fact that the Black Panther was who he was and all that kind of stuff. But what I was disappointed with is when they went out of the palace down on the ground. Like, why, with that technology, do you still have people herding cows? Why do you have these people looking like they live in a ghetto?
Yeah.
What is that?
That's true.
It's because they couldn't see it. The filmmakers themselves could not see a future without poverty, without us being trapped in the same kind of democratic society that we have here. And so they wrote the film according to that. And that was my disappointment in it. And then we needed the CIA. Like, why are they even being challenged? They got the best weapons in the entire world. And
that's true.
Yeah.
And I mean, and to add to that, like I've seen like Wicked, and Wicked paints a nice little narrative that we don't really think of, and looking at the Wicked Witch of the West, and just when you adapt it to society, it's like, ooh, wow, like that's interesting.
Yeah, I directed the production of The Wiz in Michigan at the Kalamazoo Civic Theater. And when they asked me to come and direct it, I said, okay, I only have one prerequisite, and that is that Eveline and, what was the good witch?
Glenda.
And Glenda, they both had to be dark.
Oh, okay.
I was not the one that was going to go in and have the evil witch dark and the good witch light. I couldn't in my psyche do that. And so they can both be light. They could both be dark. You can flip it if you want, and have the dark with the good one.
But you make the audience make that decision.
You do, and you force it in a way that it goes back to Margaret Burroughs' original poem about, what shall I tell my children are black, and the fact that everything black is evil. Evil is black, and everything white has been dictated as being good in the society. And we have to counter that in the way that we make our children feel that it is okay not to expose everything about yourself. It is okay for you to have a loving relationship with a man or a woman early in life, and it has should not have anything to do with sex.
Right.
When I was growing up, I didn't bit more want to have anything to do with girls until I was 11.
Right.
But prior to that, girls were, But I had all these boys. I preferred to be around them. And that's when I learned what friendship was supposed to be. And friendship should not be articulated in sexual terms.
That's true.
Not that early in life.
Right.
I mean, you know, down the line, do whatever you want to do. But early, we should know that, no, you can have a boy that you just like hanging out with. And it's okay.
And we all grew up like that, man, with our guys on the block or whatever, running and gunning, and you know.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you a couple hard questions. These are probably gonna be the hardest questions. They may not. Who knows?
Okay.
But your top 5 Chicago-made films. I know that's tough because there's so many. I know you have to.
First one that comes to mind is Raising the Sun, 1959. Spook Set by the Door, can't leave it out. Cooley High, can't leave it out. Mahogany. And this is gonna be a strange one. 1 Week.
Oh, really?
By
Okay.
Carl, I love that movie. It was Carl Seaton and Kenny Young's first film, but I love the movie.
Wow.
You know, I enjoyed it immensely, and so that one just came to mind. So,
That's
so yeah.
fine.
Now there of course have been, you know, up to date some others that have been shot here that have been, you know, Soul Food, Barbershop. I mean, I could throw some of those in, but if I went back further, those would be the ones that I was like.
What film do you think represents Chicago the best?
Maybe Barbershop. You know, I might go with that. You had the Crooked Politician, quite a few of those. The community in danger of losing, you know, these institutions. And so maybe Barbershop, yeah.
Okay. And the last question is, there anything else you would like to add that more important than, you know, for people to understand, or, you know?
There is an African proverb that says, it's a father talking to his son. He says, Daddy, you tell me that the lion is the king of the jungle, yet in every book I read, the man always kills the lion. Daddy, why is that so? So the father looks at the son and says, until the lion learns to write, the story will always be the same. We have an obligation to be the controllers of our image and our history and the stories that will generate an understanding of the people that are coming before us, of their accountabilities and responsibilities. As a storyteller, people have to decide what are those stories that are most important. How do you select them? But what are these people that are important to remember? One of the things I appreciate about Robert has constantly mentioned the fact that I mentored him. And he hasn't forgotten it. And there are a lot of people that have built institutions here where people that have taken all those institutions think that they're more important than the founders they created in the first place. When I was at the Dusama Museum, I kept having to remind myself that I was a custodian. I wasn't the person, you know, you look at the mission and you say, okay, well, this is what people are said that they wanted to do. Have we reached those things? If not, you keep doing them until you successfully accomplish those tasks. And so for those of you that are coming behind us, there are 3 things that I think are extremely important. One, the ability to build institutions where we can have the kind of discourse that we've had today, where filmmakers and writers and producers can just sit down and just talk. Secondly, we need an opportunity for people to be trained around the craft. So even if you say, well, I just want to be a director, you really need to know what editing is about.
Yep.
You know, you need to know what it is to direct actors. You know, and then thirdly, we need to control distribution. And that means building additional outlets, wrapping up the internet in a way that we are constantly selling, not selling out, but selling our essence of what we want to do to the people that are around us. You know, and that's important. And finally, what you're doing. you know, the ability to step up and say, there's nobody forcing you to do this. There's nobody underwriting the cost of how your life is going to turn out. You've made some choices, and those choices can be extremely beneficial. And this is the thing that you have to remember. You need to deal with each project like you're going to put it in a time capsule. And in 300 years, your great, 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 great grandchildren are going to open it up and they're going to see what you created. Do you still tell that story?
Right.
Do you play that part? Do you sing that song? Because they're going to be around well after you're gone.
Mr. Rami, thank you.
All right.
Man, I
Thank you,
appreciate
Henry.
it.
Yes, sir.
This is the Chicago Film Experience.